how do leaders ensure that they're being creative, but including everybody? Because including people is hard. Like we mentioned, everybody's different and you can't really force them into things.
Sure. Yeah, totally. Um, so I think that if we're talking about being inclusive of others and creating a work environment where everybody feels welcome, I think that that stage is really important, and it starts when you're creating a team, when you're finding your employees. When you're, if you say, oh, I have a business idea, but I can't do it by myself, let me find a business partner. Maybe that business partner has resources, or maybe they have the know-how on certain things that you don't quite know yet, right? I think it's super duper important that you find people that have similar values and similar objectives as you. It's kind of like what I was talking about earlier, wherein when you have a team that follows you and they love your vision and they love your values and their objectives align with yours, it's really, really easy to bring them on. And then personally feel too, because we're even leaders too. We're just people. We're not nobody special, right? Um, we have feelings, right? And sometimes I feel like, well, if I've worked with people in the past, whether it's at school, whether it's at work or whatever, and sometimes when you get paired with somebody and it wasn't your choice, um, and you just think, wow, am I really working with this person right now? I have nothing in common with them. Our goals are not the same. Our values are not the same. That what they think is awesome is something that I think is like lame. It's really hard to make them feel included when everything that you know about them, you guys just don't align, right? So I think when you're assembling a team, it's so, so, so important that you find people that share similar values and objectives as you. The reality is kind of like you were saying, is we're all different. We all come from different backgrounds. We have our own gifts, we have our own talents, and we have our own perspective in life. We have our own way at looking at things, right? So by default, yeah, we're going to be different. Um, I think that's something that applies across the board, whether or not you identify as somebody who looks and acts and thinks like you, or somebody who is completely different from you, is actually the golden rule, right? Which is found in the Bible. This is Matthew 7:12. It says here, do to others what you would like them to do to you. So my question is actually, okay, so if you want a space where people feel included and heard, um, if that's what you want, are you doing the same to them, right? Do you want to be listened to? Do you want to be made to feel like you have a voice, or that your input's like actually valuable, right? And if those are the things that you want them to do to you, well, then do it to them, right? So you should listen to them. You should make them feel like they actually have a voice, that they're not just saying something and you're like, yeah, that idea is not great, bye, or next or whatever. And I think that when you make people feel like they have a voice and that their input is valuable, then you create by default an inclusive environment for the whole team.
Yeah. Yeah. So, how do you, when you lead, how do you affect what you do?
Hmm. I think the way that I affect kind of my team, right, and the things that I do is, again, leading by example would probably be my biggest thing that I try to do. Whenever I'm working on a project and I have a team, or whenever I am working on, I'm a musician, right? So I'm a band leader. And um, when I lead my band, I myself am always giving 100%. I always give the best, right? Um, and so that way, when I expect others, when I say, hey, your expectation this morning is that you give your best. Well, it's not fair for me to have that expectation of them when I'm not giving my best, right? Um, so I think it's really important to have that. I think as far as affecting your space, I think again, communication and being clear and listening is probably the biggest other thing as far as when people, when you want to affect people, you need to have them be able to listen to you. You need to have them receive what you have to say. And the way to do that is you need to communicate incredibly clear. You don't want to dance around what you're trying to say. You don't want to like kind of half say what you're trying to say. You just want to actually tell them what's going on. And you want to be clear about your goals. You want to be clear about your values and make sure that they understand those things. And in that space, then you can start to affect what's around you, right? Back to the band thing, right? Um, I think it was Max Lucado who said a man who leads an orchestra must turn his back on the crowd in order to lead the orchestra, right? If you think of a director or a conductor and they're doing their whole deal, they're looking at the orchestra because the orchestra needs to look at them, right? They're not looking at all the people behind them saying like, look at me, I'm this like awesome person, I'm this owner, I'm this like orchestra conductor. They're actually working with the band, they're communicating with the band first. And once that is done, then the people behind you, your customers or your crowd or your whatever, they're benefiting from the fact that you and your partners or your employees or whatever your volunteers, if you have some kind of nonprofit or something, that they're feeling like you're listening to them and that you're talking to them and they're able to talk back, right?
Yeah. I have never heard it in that way. I think that's a really good analogy because when you actually think about it, the crowd, I've never thought of that. The like, he's turning his
Hmm.
back, and the
Yeah.
crowd, like, if I was sitting, I would get affected by what, you know, and that means they're not focusing on what's happening around them and focusing on what's in front of
Hmm.
them. I think that's also a good
Of
spiritual
course. Yeah.
analogy as well because it's hard to
Yeah.
focus, especially on stage. I've been on stage a couple of times, and the lights, first of
Hmm.
all, are extremely blinding. And so to focus only on the orchestra probably was hard at first. And so I feel like listening, it
Hmm.
also is saying it's a good analogy by listening instead of focusing on all the distractions too as well is something.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that analogy. I'm going to use that now.
Yeah. Yeah. Max Lucado is awesome. So that's where that comes from.
I love that.
Pretty cool.
Taking notes. So, how do you know if you're leading
Cool.
currently?
Um, well, I think that that is something that you can, um, I think that's something that you can actually know inside your own kind of your heart, right? Inside of your own mind. Um, I know there are seasons in my life where even if I'm working with people or not working with people, uh, it's like in my life, right? If I have things that I have to do in my own life and I keep putting them off, there's been seasons where I'm like, oh yeah, I just totally don't want to do this. I don't want to like, you know, do clean my house, clean my room, clean my, my car. My car's like going on 2 months dirty. I don't want to do it. That's like a really good example of not relying on others for to measure your leadership, right? Because if those things are not done, they're just kind of left undone, they're just kind of left there, then I'm not leading my own life, right? If my responsibilities and what I have to come up and show up and do isn't being done, then I know, okay, I am not leading my life, right? Adversely, there's seasons where you are doing all those things, where you are completing all your chores, where you're completing all your tasks, um, where your fridge is, full of groceries because you went grocery shopping instead of just getting, takeout or Taco Bell or whatever you do. And in a sense too, I think that is another metric on your own, um, where you can tell, okay, I'm leading right now, right? And it's kind of just taking care of your responsibility. When it comes to a team setting, I think how you know you're leading is if other people will look to you and say, okay, here's where we are. What do we do? You know, I think that some people, obviously, like we said earlier, they have different giftings. They come from different backgrounds, and everybody's different. Some people naturally have a gift of leadership, and some people are just kind of more anointed for that leadership role than others. Um, I'm not saying that that means that not everybody can be a leader, because I think we all can in our own capacities. But um, I think the best way to know is just checking around, having your eyes open, looking at your surroundings. If people gravitate towards you and say, hey, David, hey, Sophia, what do we do here? Here's the situation. I think that's probably the easiest way to tell that you're being a leader, or that you're seen as a leader in your community.
So, out of everything that we talked about, what is one thing you want somebody to take home after all that?
Yeah, totally. I know that was a lot. Um, the biggest thing that I want somebody to know, if anything, even if they don't watch the whole thing, if they just watch this part, I want people to know that it's so important that you find the reason why you do what you do. I think once you have your vision, once you have your why instead of your what, everything else will follow. Um, because when you measure something on why you're doing it, it becomes less about the thing you're doing and the why you're doing it, which means that you start to care about things that aren't measurable. And that can be teamwork, that can be having empathy for those working with you, that can be even come down to the way that you present your product. Instead of it being like, hey, check out this really cool thing that I'm selling. I work so hard on it, blah, blah, blah. That's cool. I'm not saying that is bad, but what I'm saying is, hey, this thing will improve your life, or this thing looks really awesome and you'll feel super cool owning it. Or, this song is the meaning of this song, and why I wrote the song is, a specific reason. And it's not just because, look at me, I'm so good at singing or so good at guitar. It's like, the reason why you do things is actually more important than what you do. Um, you know, I think that also, um, when you're in that space, you tend to operate and communicate more out of a space of love, right? And I'm not saying love like this weird emotional attachment or bond thing. I'm just saying that you're operating out of love. Like, you're being excellent to people, you're being kind to people, you're showing empathy. Right? The Bible says, if I have the gift of prophecy and can fathom all mysteries and all knowledge, and I have faith that can move mountains, but that I do not have love, it says, I am nothing, right? And so I think when we focus on the why, we tend to gravitate more towards operating in love, because you're not thinking about an actual thing. You're thinking about an idea or a value or a culture. And obviously, myself, as somebody who follows Jesus, that's kind of, he's the reason why I do a lot of what I do. And when he's the reason, everything that I do by default needs to be out of love, because Jesus is love, right? So it's really important. My biggest encouragement to business owners, to team leaders, is to find the why and not the what.
I think that's a good takeaway because it burnout is very real. I like
Mm-hmm.
I take after my mom and I like overworking. I am like always I'm kind of a perfectionist and I'm
Sure.
like, oh, I have to do this and I want to do this because if not, I don't
Yeah.
want to do it at all. And our family,
Yeah.
when we go
Totally.
in, we go all in, like in an insane amount.
Yeah. Your
And I
family's
think,
awesome.
thank you. And I think I need to like slow down and be like, okay, you know what? I should probably not overwork and, you know, because then again, I also have other things to do than work and probably should enjoy life. But thank you so much, David,
Yeah.
for being
Totally.
on the show. I really enjoyed everything we talked about. and I really love you being on the show. I was super excited that you're on, and I'm super glad that everything went successful and it was super fun. Thank you.
Hmm. Yeah. Thank you, Sophia. It was a pleasure. I'd love to come back anytime. And I think what you're doing is really important for the next generation, and for current business owners and anybody who, you know, has uh, leadership and business on their heart. I think you're doing a really good work here. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Well, have an amazing rest of your day, David. Bye.
Thank you. You too, Sophia. See ya. Are we good?
I'm trying to end it. Oh, there we go.